For days, she was missing from the public eye. No engagements, no statements, no explanation. The palace remained silent. Then, a single headline emerged. Concerning news regarding the Princess of Wales. The nation held its breath, and behind palace walls, a storm had already begun. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. What began as a minor absence from a charity visit quickly snowballed into a national mystery. Catherine, Princess of Wales, had abruptly withdrawn from multiple scheduled appearances, events she'd championed and personally coordinated. The silence from Kensington Palace was deafening. Reporters camped outside royal estates, pressing for answers, yet royal aides remained rigidly tight-lipped, brushing off questions with vague remarks about personal matters. But behind closed doors, the anxiety was palpable. Sources close to the inner circle described an atmosphere of restrained panic, with even senior royals said to be visibly strained during recent public engagements. Prince William's expression had darkened noticeably, while Queen Camilla reportedly cancelled a private luncheon without explanation. Whispers began to seep through the cracks this was not a political issue, nor a matter of protocol. Something personal, something deeply unsettling, was unfolding. Theories erupted across media outlets and social channels, ranging from sudden health concerns to an unspoken family crisis. It all culminated in a cryptic, carefully worded statement from Buckingham Palace. "We ask for understanding during this time and extend gratitude for the continued support shown to Her Royal Highness." No clarification, no reassurance, just silence, wrapped in diplomacy. And yet, behind that controlled language was a truth few had access to, a truth Catherine had been quietly told mere days before vanishing from the public eye. But it wasn't just absence that haunted the royal watchers, it was what Catherine had been told in secret just days before disappearing. Delivered by hand and marked strictly confidential, the envelope bore the royal seal, but it didn't come from Charles. It was from an unexpected figure with a past full of shadows, and its contents would shake Catherine to her core. It arrived in silence, no announcement, no forewarning. A private courier, dressed in understated royal livery, slipped through the side gates of Adelaide Cottage. The envelope was thick, its seal ancient, unfamiliar to most modern royal eyes. When Catherine, Princess of Wales, held it in her hands, something felt instantly wrong. It wasn't from the king, nor from any current royal official. It came from someone whose name had been all but erased from public life, an estranged relative of Diana's lineage, long whispered about in hushed conversations but never openly acknowledged. The letter inside was not simply personal, it was a bombshell. Page after page detailed what the writer claimed were the last months of Princess Diana's life, not as they were portrayed to the public, but as they truly unfolded. Allegations of internal surveillance, covert influence from senior palace figures, and subtle forms of emotional isolation painted a version of Diana's story Catherine had never seen before. There were names of people still very much alive and in power, linked to decisions that, if true, rewrote the royal timeline. The tone wasn't emotional. It was clinical, as if the sender wanted facts to do the haunting. And they did. Catherine sat in stunned silence for hours. When she finally spoke, it was to one trusted aide, someone who had served Diana during her final year. The reaction was immediate. The aide, known for her discretion, reportedly wept. Catherine's calm cracked only once, when she whispered that she finally understood the warnings she'd once dismissed as paranoia. Meanwhile, Prince William, shielded, at first eventually learned of the letter. And when he did, fury erupted. Not just over the content, but over who had kept these secrets buried for so long. He confronted his father behind locked doors at Clarence House, demanding to know whether Charles had known all along, but the king's response, if there was one, never made it beyond that room. And yet, amidst the swirl of emotion, confusion, and fear, one thing remained constant: the name on the final page. A name that Catherine never expected to see, but one that would change everything. But even more shocking than the letter was the name it mentioned, a name Catherine never thought she'd see tied to her own fate. The deeper Catherine read, the more chilling the pattern became. Parallels between her own life and Princess Diana's began to emerge, not just emotional, but systemic. And the final sentence? They did it once. They'll do it again. Catherine could no longer sleep through the night. Her dreams were filled with whispers, half-remembered conversations, and the echo of a life lost too soon. What began as curiosity became obsession. She combed through old reports, private correspondences, and forgotten archival material buried in the palace's restricted vaults. The more she uncovered, the more undeniable it became. Diana hadn't just been emotionally isolated, she'd been strategically cornered. Each step leading to her public downfall had been meticulously orchestrated. And now, 2 decades later, Catherine saw the same footprints forming beneath her. Engagements rescheduled without her input. Advisors steering her statements. Press briefings, framing her absences with carefully ambiguous language. It wasn't paranoia, it was precedent. A recovered cache of raw footage from the 1990s, once thought lost, showed Diana in quiet, reflective moments, breaking under pressure while the cameras were still rolling. Catherine played those clips late into the night, eyes locked on the subtle tics, the same weariness she now saw in herself. And then came the realization that shook her to the core. She wasn't the first to speak of it. Meghan Markle's words, once dismissed by the establishment and dismissed by Catherine herself, now echoed with devastating relevance. The parallels weren't perfect, but the machinery, the cold, impersonal system beneath the crown was identical. Catherine began pulling away, even from those closest to her. She trusted only one voice now, her own. But silence became unbearable, and one evening she confronted William, not with anger, but with fear. "Do you not see it?" she asked him. "The patterns, the pressure, the silence." William, at first, resisted, but as the days passed, and he too began to notice the way certain advisors hovered too close, how information about Catherine's whereabouts leaked before even he was told, he took a step back. Meetings with senior aides became shorter. Aides were shuffled. Phone calls went unanswered. For the first time, William wasn't just the heir, he was a husband trying to shield the woman he loved from the same fate that had destroyed his mother. And as the comparisons deepened, Catherine realized she wasn't just being watched, she was being tested. Whispers became accusations. And inside the royal court, trust collapsed like a house of cards. Catherine's revelation forced long-buried tensions to explode. This wasn't just a family divided, it was a monarchy fractured. What had once been private doubt turned into open confrontation. Behind the thick walls of royal estates, silence was no longer the weapon, it was the casualty. Charles, blindsided by the storm Catherine had uncovered, demanded that matters be handled discreetly. But discretion no longer held power over a narrative spiraling out of control. William, once the dutiful heir towing the institutional line, stood his ground for the first time in years. He refused to let history repeat itself, not for his wife, not for his children. When Charles attempted to issue a statement to temper the growing speculation, William blocked it, calling it tone-deaf and disconnected from reality. The standoff wasn't subtle, it was seismic. Camilla, sensing the widening rift, tried to step in. She arranged a private meeting with Catherine, hoping to ease tensions and remind her of the importance of preserving the monarchy's public face. But Catherine didn't budge. She was done with pleasantries and optics. In a rare moment of defiance, she reportedly told Camilla, "What you're trying to protect almost destroyed me." The divide was unmistakable. Then came the unexpected voice of support, Princess Anne. The stoic royal, who rarely interfered in internal disputes, stood firmly beside William, stating that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, must come before tradition. Her words hit harder than anyone expected. They reframed the conflict as one not between personalities, but between principle and survival. And as tensions mounted, the media began breaking ranks with the palace. Long protected by unwritten rules and selective access, the monarchy now found itself unshielded. Questions grew sharper, headlines more brazen. Paparazzi began circling not just Catherine, but her children. In response, Kensington Palace quietly elevated security measures. More guards, more checkpoints, fewer appearances. The message was clear: something serious was unfolding, and they were bracing for impact. But the chaos wasn't just external. Inside Catherine's circle, a more personal storm was quietly brewing. But the final betrayal didn't come from the outside. It came from within the one person Catherine thought would always shield her. In the midst of chaos, William faced a terrible choice: protect the institution or protect his wife. But his decision would fracture more than tradition. It would fracture Catherine. The pressure had reached its breaking point. Senior officials at the palace, desperate to regain control of the spiraling narrative, urged William to issue a carefully crafted public statement, a message of unity, stability, and confidence in the monarchy. But behind the scenes, William wavered. Every line he read aloud felt like betrayal. How could he stand before the world and speak of harmony when his own home was drowning in silence, hurt, and mistrust? His heart pulled toward Catherine, but his royal training, years of conditioning, pulled him the other way. Days passed. Catherine waited. No support came, no correction of rumors, no firm denial of the growing media circus surrounding her absence and her supposed emotional instability. Instead, she was left to stand alone against the tidal wave. And then came the leak. A private moment, a painful argument between Catherine and William, somehow made its way into the tabloids. A screaming headline, a twisted quote, the illusion of unity shattered. For the first time in their marriage, the public saw cracks not in policy, but in love. Days later, William appeared at an official event, his left hand bare. The missing wedding ring didn't go unnoticed. Nor did the downturned eyes, the unusually brisk departure, or the tight jawline that betrayed more than any official statement could. Cameras followed Catherine the very next day, catching her leaving Kensington Palace, her face turned away, her eyes red. For those who had doubted the extent of the internal damage, the message was now undeniable. The crisis had turned deeply personal. And what stung most wasn't the betrayal from the press or the institution, it was the silence from the one man she thought would always defend her. William had hesitated, and that hesitation had cost more than peace. It had wounded the one person who needed him most. And just when the public feared they'd seen the worst, news broke that Catherine had been admitted to a private medical facility under strict security. They called it a temporary step back, but the walls around Catherine told a different story. No visitors, no press, no clarity, and the phrase repeated in every corner of the media, "Princess Catherine has disappeared." The announcement came quietly, almost deliberately understated. Palace sources cited stress-related exhaustion, a phrase so carefully chosen it raised more questions than it answered. Catherine had been admitted to a private medical facility, its location undisclosed, its security heightened beyond normal royal protocol. The message was meant to calm the public, but instead, it ignited something far more dangerous: suspicion. Because this wasn't rest. It was isolation. According to those briefed on the arrangement, Catherine herself requested no visitors. Not friends, not extended family, not even familiar faces meant to offer comfort. The decision stunned insiders. For a woman known for resilience and composure, the choice to withdraw so completely felt less like recovery and more like retreat. Then came another detail that sent shockwaves through royal circles: the involvement of Queen Elizabeth's former personal physician, a figure associated not with routine care, but with moments of profound gravity in the monarchy's past. His presence alone suggested that this situation went far beyond fatigue. As days turned into weeks, whispers grew darker. Some aides quietly speculated that Catherine might not return to public duties at all, not soon, perhaps not ever. The palace refused to confirm or deny, allowing uncertainty to fester. Meanwhile, The media frenzy exploded beyond Britain's borders. International outlets demanded transparency. Social platforms flooded with hashtags calling for truth. Supporters gathered outside palace gates, holding signs, lighting candles, pleading for reassurance. Yet Catherine remained silent. No photographs, no messages, no voice. William, too, was rarely seen, his appearances brief and rigid, offering no clarity and even less comfort. The silence became its own kind of statement, one that suggested fragility, fracture, and a loss of control at the very heart of the monarchy. And beneath the official language and sympathetic headlines, a deeper fear took hold. If Catherine, the symbol of modern stability, grace under pressure, could vanish this completely, what did that say about the system surrounding her? What did it say about the cost of survival inside the crown? The uncertainty was suffocating, the suffering unmistakable. And just as the public began to accept that they might never hear Catherine's side of the story, something unexpected happened. A voice broke through the silence. Not from the palace, not from the press, but from someone no one saw coming. But while Catherine stayed silent, a surprising voice emerged, one that reignited hope, but also raised the stakes higher than ever. He'd stayed quiet until now. In a stunning recorded message, Prince Harry spoke not as a royal, but as Diana's son. And his words weren't just support, they were a direct warning to the monarchy. The video wasn't polished, it wasn't staged, it was raw. Prince Harry appeared alone, his tone measured but unmistakably emotional. What began as a simple expression of concern quickly turned into something far more powerful, an indictment of the very institution he once represented. Without naming names, Harry drew a chilling comparison. "When my mother cried out, no one listened," he said. "When my wife cried out, they turned it against her. And now, it's Catherine." That single sentence shattered any illusion of unity the palace had hoped to maintain. In a matter of minutes, Harry reframed Catherine's silence, not as weakness, but as a warning sign, one rooted in generational trauma. He spoke not just to Britain, but to the world, urging those watching to learn from the past before history repeats in full. While Meghan did not appear alongside him, her silence only amplified the impact. Her own allegations, once dismissed by royal loyalists, now gained new life, echoed by a voice no one could ignore. Harry didn't stop there. He condemned the royal press machinery, calling it abusive, complicit, and dangerous. He accused palace operatives of feeding narratives to the media, weaponizing silence, and turning the public against those they should have protected. Within hours, the internet erupted. Hashtags like #ProtectCatherine and #NoMoreSilence dominated global trends. Petitions were launched. Statements of support from celebrities, mental health advocates, and former staff flooded social platforms. Buckingham Palace, reportedly blindsided by the timing, scrambled for damage control. Internal meetings were called. Spokespeople went silent. And still, no official response to Harry's claims was issued. The monarchy, once so adept at managing crises, was now watching its internal fracture play out in front of millions without control, without narrative, without precedent. Harry had changed the game. And whether the royals acknowledged it or not, the public had chosen a side. But even as the world rallied around her, Catherine herself remained unseen. Her voice, still missing. Until now. Now, with the world watching and the monarchy on edge, the truth Catherine fought to reveal finally came to light through her own voice. She didn't need a press conference. All it took was a single handwritten entry leaked from her personal journal. And in those lines, Catherine shattered decades of royal silence. It began with a whisper, an unconfirmed report that someone inside the private facility had seen something. Within hours, a single scanned page surfaced online, handwritten, raw, unequivocally hers. The entry, dated just days after her admittance, read like a cry from deep within. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't filtered through PR advisors. It was Catherine, unmasked. "I am not just a symbol, I am a woman. And I am breaking." Those words struck like thunder. For years, She had been the image of grace, the smiling portrait on balcony appearances, the polished figure draped in duty. But here she was, revealing what that performance had cost her. The entry spoke of pressure mounting, suffocating pressure to always be composed, always be silent, always be perfect. She wrote of betrayal, of realizing that loyalty within the royal institution was often transactional, and most of all, she wrote of fear. Not just of the media or the public, but of being erased, replaced, forgotten. "If I vanish, will they notice?" she asked in one heartbreaking line. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Across continents, millions shared her words. News anchors choked up reading them aloud. Social media flooded with messages of solidarity and sorrow. Mental health advocates, world leaders, and even former royals issued statements praising her courage. For the first time in royal history, the image of perfection was shattered by the voice of vulnerability, and the palace had no choice but to respond. Initially, they remained quiet, hoping perhaps the world would move on. But as global headlines refused to fade, Buckingham Palace released a short statement confirming the entry's authenticity. No denial, no edits. Just truth, finally acknowledged. Then came the moment no one expected. William, long silent and often criticized for his hesitance, stepped forward. At a youth charity event, he didn't speak, he didn't lecture. He simply stood, holding a leather-bound notebook in his hand, the very journal the entry had come from. His voice broke as he said, "She needed someone to listen, and I wasn't there soon enough." That image of the heir to the throne, holding his wife's pain in his hands, became the symbol of a reckoning. Not just for the monarchy, but for the idea that silence equals strength. Catherine's truth had erupted like a fault line through centuries of protocol. But while the world embraced her vulnerability, not every royal figure was moved by it. But even as Catherine's truth echoed across the world, the royal response was far from unified, and one figure made a move that would reshape the line of succession itself. King Charles convened a private council. What followed was unprecedented, a royal decree that altered the public role of Catherine and sent shockwaves through the Commonwealth. It wasn't made in front of flashing cameras or behind a golden podium. It was quiet, controlled, strategic. But the ripple it created was anything but subtle. Following weeks of public turmoil, emotional revelations, and mounting pressure, King Charles emerged from a closed-door meeting with his most trusted advisors and issued an order that would redefine the face of the monarchy. Catherine, Princess of Wales, would step away from all public royal duties for an extended period of personal restoration. The words were carefully chosen, but the message was unmistakable. This wasn't a pause, it was a reckoning, and it had come directly from the top. Alongside the announcement, Charles confirmed that Prince William would be suspending his formal preparations for succession temporarily so that he could focus entirely on his family. The future king stepping back even momentarily was unheard of, but it spoke volumes. Behind the walls of royalty, power had always meant performance. Now, for the first time, it meant preservation. In a move that caught even seasoned royal watchers off guard, Princess Anne, respected, relentless, and unwavering, was appointed to oversee engagements on behalf of the crown during this transitional phase. The choice wasn't symbolic. It was deliberate. Anne represented duty without spectacle, stability without spin. Her presence sent a message. The monarchy was not collapsing. It was recalibrating. As reporters scrambled to interpret the shift, Buckingham Palace released a companion statement declaring the institution's commitment to becoming a modern and empathetic monarchy, one that places people above protocol. To some, it was long overdue. To others, it was Catherine's courage made manifest in royal policy. The woman, once bound by silence, had, through raw honesty, sparked institutional evolution. Then came her voice. In a handwritten message shared through official channels, Catherine spoke not as a princess, but as a survivor. "Truth saved me," she wrote, "and the love I felt from around the world gave me the strength to speak it." It wasn't lengthy. It wasn't polished. But it struck something deep within millions. who had followed her journey. It was a quiet triumph over centuries of suppression. Across the UK and far beyond, trust in the monarchy, once fraying, began to slowly knit itself back together. Not because of grandeur, but because of grace. Because the world saw that even within one of the most powerful families on earth, pain was real, and healing was possible. But the scars? They remained. The institution may have turned a page, but the shadow of what led to this moment would never fully vanish. It would serve as a cautionary tale, etched into the legacy of every royal who followed. Catherine's suffering had not been in vain. It had reshaped history not with scandal, but with sincerity. And as the palace doors slowly opened once again to the public eye, something was unmistakably different. The monarchy had been forced to feel, and in that feeling, it had found something far more lasting than tradition humanity. And so, beneath the crown and behind the curtains, one woman's pain became a mirror and a reckoning for the world's most powerful family. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.